It's exactly 4 in Cairo. This is World of Info from Radio Cairo, Studio 3, and we're directly coming to you live. And it's great to have you with us, and we have a very distinguished guest, but after the break. Today we have a very distinguished and a special guest to us, His Excellency Ambassador Arvydas Donorovičius. I'm sorry. His Excellency, he is the Ambassador of the Republic of Lithuania in Cairo, with a very colorful diplomatic career that extended between Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg and Chicago, and coming here serving as an ambassador, a very distinguished ambassador in Egypt. Really, we're very proud and very grateful that you have come to visit us in Radio Cairo and be a guest of honor. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for such a nice introduction. I'm pleased. I don't recognize myself.
No, actually, sir, really, it's a great blessing to have such a cultured gentleman who is not only having a colorful career in diplomacy, but also have a rich family heritage that we'll talk about afterwards. But definitely also a great sportsman who was able to have a bronze medal in the jumping and long jump, right, sir, or it's high jump?
It was long jump, but it was several sports together. It's like pentathlon.
Oh, pentathlon. So it's a lot of things to talk about with His Excellency, the Ambassador of Lithuania, and of course about his beautiful and surviving and strong fighting country that was able to rise like a phoenix, which is a great effort that this country has made through history and the present day Europe. Sir, thank you very much for coming, and after the break we'll talk more about Lithuania. A very beautiful piece of music with His Excellency Ambassador Arvydas Donorovičius, Ambassador of Lithuania in Cairo. Tell us about this special piece of music, because you have chosen it from your vast and beautiful classical music library and said that this piece just can give us the image of the Egyptian-Lithuanian relations, although originally it was not intended to be so.
I really I love this piece called Menuetto Grazioso by our famous composer and painter Mikalojus Konstantinas Čiurlionis, who unfortunately died at a very, very young age. And this piece was played by Vilnius State String Quartet, and this is probably one of the most favorite, my personally pieces of music I ever heard. Mikalojus Konstantinas Čiurlionis is something, I don't know, more than a legend in Lithuania. Some of us know him as a wonderful painter. Some of us know him as a wonderful composer. Some of them know him as a musician. But when we talk, I was thinking about the relationship between Lithuania and Egypt, and I thought probably it would be very good to mention Mikalojus Konstantinas Čiurlionis, in which paintings you find the pyramids from Egypt. And I am amazed. I really need to do some search. Why? How it's possible? Definitely never went to Egypt, so definitely he never ever seen pyramids, but somehow the pyramids are on his paintings, and not only one painting, several of them. So either it was artist vision, or maybe he saw some drawings somewhere else, I don't know, but I thought it's very nice bridge, very nice link between Egypt and Lithuania, and why I chose Mikalojus Konstantinas Čiurlionis music to be played on this program.
The Mystique of Pyramids, I really admire the work that he has done, because the pyramids have been always attractive structures for anyone who has seen a picture of them. And I myself went to the pyramids when I was quite young, the school trips, and then suddenly when you go at an older age, you will never ever appreciate how magnificent they are until you go there. And I believe you had this impression when you went to the pyramids for the first time, to see how huge the structure is. Usually we see the structures in postcards, and we see the structures in small paintings and things like that, and you suddenly find yourself in front of such a huge pyramid-like cubes, and then the second thing you know is that the only statue that is surviving of cubes is a very small statue small statuette, if you use the expression, in the Egyptian museum. So the magnificent use of pyramids and the fact that the pyramids have these triangular facets and the reflection of the sun that comes from them and their share in their sun appearance is definitely a very strange way of how to consider them as a sort of sharing in the mystique of life, like your decent gentlemen who have shared with us through the years, through 100 years, a piece of music that is relating Egypt with Lithuania. So when we talk about Lithuania, we understand that of course it's one of the Baltic states of the Republics, but geographically it's a country that has been affected by its position. How far is this statement true, especially that the Grand Duchy of Lithuania was the largest country in Europe during the 14th century, and then there was this period of decline? Was the geography could explain the rise and the fall of this great state?
It's a very interesting subject you touch with your question, how the geography could influence the history of the country. It's very, very interesting. Probably we could spend many programs again just talking about that. But coming back to Lithuania, if you start drawing the lines in Europe, linking south with the north, or north with the south, west with the east, or diagonals, most of these lines will cross on the territory of Lithuania. It was very interesting. If I'm not mistaken, it was in 1989 when the French National Geographic Institute discovered the geographical center of Europe is in Lithuania. It's about 26 kilometers from the capital city Vilnius.
Wow.
And we have a big monument now. They are just marking that you guys are standing at the geographical center of Europe.
People don't really grasp this, because as you go northwards, you find out yourself how the country is how the Europe itself is becoming lesser in size. So people cannot see it on a map, but actually it is 100% true, as you have mentioned.
Yes, it's not us. As sometimes we're joking that it's not us that we declare the geographical center of Europe is here. It's the scientists in the French National Geographical Institute. They did the calculations and sent us a certificate.
So this means that it was destiny that is driving Lithuania to expand, and it was destiny or geographical destiny that was pushing Lithuania in period of turmoil and period of losing a lot of its territories, right?
Probably you are right, because when you are in the middle of the major crossroads, so the Germanic tribes try to move east, and the Russian tribes have been trying to move west, and they all of them actually have been walking through Lithuania. Now we are talking, and next year we'll celebrate 100 years of the Republic of Lithuania, when the Republic was established. But
1918, following the First World War.
Yes. But you're absolutely right when you mention Grand Duchy of Lithuania. These 100 years, it are the years of the Republic. The state of Lithuania has much longer history. The first time the name of Lithuania was mentioned in writing, and stress in writing, in 1009. So more than 1,000 years ago, we have a written proof that Lithuania existed, maybe under different territory, maybe uniting other tribes, but yes, we have a very long history of statehood, and we are very proud of that.
And you had, of course, a very connection, a very strong connection with Poland, the neighboring country. For sometimes Poland was part of Lithuania, and other times there were sort of like a tide and loss of tide in this relation. Of course, nowadays it's a very strong fraternal relation of economic cooperation, and of course part of the European community. But this gives us a glimpse of how far neighbors can really have different relations. You were unfortunately been victims of invasion by the Soviet Union and by the Nazi Germany, and of course Poland was also victimized. So suddenly the two countries that were having a sort of competitive relation became victims to the same invading powers. Could you tell us about this complicated relation between your neighbors? I mean, historically, of course, we're not talking today, because today more or less it's a friendly relation, but we'll talk about history for a while.
In the times, so in the best years of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, when we talk about the crowning our first king Mindaugas in 1253, winning the big battles called Saulės battle, or winning another Durbės battle or Žalgiris battle, some call Grunwald battle, in 1410, when our united armies beaten the invaders from different orders, either from west or east. It's the Teutonic Order or the Livonic Order. Sorry, I don't know the name in English, but when your state is fighting for centuries, that at some moment it became so exhausted for the country. And both countries, Lithuania and Poland, at that time started looking towards unification of efforts to resist this new threats from rising powers. So we signed the Lublin Union, which declared the Republic of Two States. That was probably the first confederation in the world. And what is interesting, at the dawn of this Republic of Two States, we managed to accept, to approve the Constitution. In 1791, it was the second written constitution in the world after the United States, and few months earlier than French Constitution. So we say we are not third, we are second constitution, and it's May 3rd, 1791.
It's 2 years after the French Revolution, and France was still in turmoil. You started to have your own constitution.
Unfortunately, 4 years later, 1795, our common state experienced the third partition, and the part of Lithuania was annexed by Tsar Russia at that time, which we stayed under occupation for 123 years until 1918, when we reestablished independence and created the Republic of Lithuania, which 100 years we are going to celebrate next February.
And this brings us to a very important period, which is, I think, the period of turmoil. From 1918 onwards, Lithuania has seen such hard times, have seen great defeats, have seen great occupation from two superpowers at that time, which was, of course, the Nazis and the Soviet Union, and then the Soviet Union first, then the Nazis, then the Soviet Union again, and the annexing of Lithuania to the Soviet Union. Before we went on air, we were talking about something which is very horrible in the history of a country, which is the brain drain, or the human being drain, where people were forced to leave their country from fear of being forced during the Tsar time to serve in the army of the Tsars, of the Russian Tsar, for 25 years, as one of your grandfathers have suffered, or from the period of the occupation of the Soviet Union, when people of Lithuania who have such a decent education might be prosecuted against being enemies against the people, and could face a horrible fate in exile. How could you really analyze and summarize this period of turmoil and period of human suffrage? How can this affect the human beings or the citizens of Lithuania of today? How they look at it?
It's always how to say. You could say that it's very difficult to speak about the history. Something happened so far away, so many years ago. But the events we are talking happened relatively recently.
Yes.
There is still a lot of citizens, a lot of people who remember that. Even my mother, she's 84 now, and she still remembers that. She was a child at school, first, second grade, when these terrible things started happening. So the first Soviet occupation, it was in 1940.
Yes.
And unfortunately to us, the Soviets immediately started deportations to Siberia, which have been stopped only by their Nazi attack. So
and the Nazis were not that kind, of course, to you. I mean,
well, we suffered under the Nazis as well, and several years. And then the Soviets came back, and as you said, the people already experienced what could happen under the Soviet rule. So they fled. They fled with the retreating army, and they stayed in the displaced person camps. And some of them have been less lucky, and they fall to wrong sector in Germany and have been returned back to Soviet-occupied Lithuania. So most of them disappeared or have been sent to Siberia. But those who managed to escape, mostly through the American sector, the Western Allies sector, they landed in different countries. Some of them went to Latin America, some of them to Canada, and quite big number of them, I might be mistaken, but I think about 30,000-40,000 went to United States. And as we discussed, these people have been of really the elite in the good sense of the word, doctors, professors, with a graduation from the world's famous universities, who have been devoted their life and worked to the Republic of Lithuania, to their homeland, and now they have been forced to run, sometimes without anything, just had half an hour to pack and to run because the front was approaching. So they landed. I know more about those who landed, ended up in United States, because I served there. So I had the privilege to talk to them, and it's very difficult to talk about these sufferings because people still remember. And some of them even couldn't talk without the tears in their eyes about the sufferings when they saw during these trips their relatives, small children dying, and these terrible things which could happen only during the war and during the deportations, or the people who were forced to run out of their home countries. Then Lithuanians are very, how to say, stubborn people. They work hard. They studied. They try to send their children to school, to university, and really there is a quite big number of those who reach the high hierarchy even in United States. So starting from actually not zero but minus, below zero, having nothing, just coming to United States as refugees, being grateful to the country of United States who accepted them, allowed them to come, working hard, making their way to high echelons in the society, and they did that by their hard work, and also being involved in the community work, creating the organizations. I remember when I was in Chicago, I checked the list, and at that time we had 43 organizations of Lithuanian diaspora only in the state of Illinois. 43. It's unbelievable.
And you can, as I was very amazed to find out that these people still maintained their pride of their own country, and their fact that they wanted to stay connected even when their country has fallen behind the Iron Curtain. And still, when the first moment that Lithuania has regained its independence and been declared as a free republic in 1989-1990, then at this time the Lithuanians came back, or the people who were living in the United States, and it was up to you and of course your predecessors working as consuls of Lithuania in Chicago to give them back their own passports and their own identity. And I believe this was a very emotional moment, right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And some of them even said that it's very normal, because I am Lithuanian. Okay, it was certain gap that I had no passport, but I consider that as just a gap. So I just finally I got what belongs to me. It's a passport of the Republic of Lithuania. So that was really very emotional. It's even sometimes hard to talk when you remember these emotional. And some of them, surprisingly, even second or even third generation, some of them speak perfect Lithuanian, which surprised me. Some of them, of course, not. That you cannot judge them, but some of them kept everything, the language, culture, spirit, Lithuanian spirit, and at the same time working hard, studying, being the citizens of the United States, and grateful for what the United States did for them, opened the doors to escape from the turmoils after the Second World War from Europe, from displaced person camps.
I really respect very much how His Excellency Ambassador Arvydas Donoravičius, Ambassador of Lithuania, talking about such an emotional moment in his career, the reunion of the Lithuanians living in diaspora, regaining their passports, regaining the moments that they felt that they really belonged to the country that they were forced to leave. If they were not forced to leave, they would have stayed forever. The unlucky ones who succumbed in Siberian concentration camps, and the partially lucky ones who stayed behind in the country during the period of the Soviet annexation or occupation, if we can use the expression, from 1946 onwards till 1989, 1990, is the period of how people really lived and suffered. How was that possible to maintain the spirit in spite of the fact that you were feeling like an occupied country and you were paying a heavy price?
It's a good question. Really, it's when the independent movement started in 1987, you immediately felt that this spirit of independence, spirit of the society, of a community, which is like continuity of the Republic of Lithuania, was alive among the society. Could you imagine 10% of population of the country gathering for the meetings, for the manifestation? 10% of the country have been present at these meetings demanding independence, and it finally the brave people declared that. They said, yes, it's a will of people, and we declare restoration of independence. As we discussed, Lithuania, it's not a new country.
It's not a new country. I mean, it's a 11th century's age. You talk about
yes,
of the country.
Official mentioning in writing
Yes.
of the name of Lithuania. Yes, and for us it was a big celebration. We call it 1,000 years since the name of Lithuania was mentioned in writings. By the way, the Baltic tribes are mentioned about 1,000 years earlier in the chronicles. I think the first was in year 97. This age.
Really. So when we talk about that period, I mean, the country was definitely having its own intelligentsia. They were having people who received good, decent education. There was the percentage of illiteracy was almost zero. We're talking about 1989. And so the country was full of hope and full of aspirations to get into rapidly assimilated as part of Europe and as officially geographically as the center of Europe. So how was the country able to change its fate, go first towards building a rising economy and acquiring the membership of the EU?
Of course, the way was not the easy one, not with the roses, covered with the roses. We had to change a lot of things. We had to adopt a lot of things to change our mentality, even to change how we see the simple things. But as we talked, the spirit was there, and most probably it was the idea which was alive that we are not newcomers, we are not something new creation, new country. We're just coming back, or trying to come back to the place which we belong, because we used to be of the part of Europe. We used to be the member of League of Nations.
Of course.
So it was like someone removed you from your place, and you doing everything to come back. And that was probably the strongest motivation. We just coming back to the place we do belong. As we said, when the Second World War was over, it was not over for us. It was a war after war, because Lithuania stayed occupied for so long time when when the entire Europe celebrated end of Second World War. So this was motivation, the spirit which was alive all these 50 years of occupation, it just was realized. Yes, it was hard. We had to go through tough economical reforms. Really, the people suffered. I remember I was already graduate after the university, so I remember these years. But that was worth to sacrifice to get what we have now. We're a member of European Union. Our income is growing. We are member of United Nations. We are back where we do belong. I think.
But how was the economy able to stand such a shock of changing from a totally dependent economy on what the orders are given from the Moscow to the country, what to produce and what not to produce, and what to compete in and what not to compete, and changing suddenly into a free market status, which is a bit difficult for a country to survive this. I mean, this is a great shock. I understand that as we are suffering nowadays from something like that in Egypt. But how were you able to change the whole economy to the opposite direction within such a short period? Because considerably it's a short period. I mean, you started regaining your status, and the hard times have begun to improve maybe 5 or 6 years after the independence. How was the new independence? How was that possible?
Probably we should start from the motivation, as we said. We always thought that we are coming back where we do belong. And we also understood, at the beginning maybe less, later a little bit more, that the economic reforms are necessary. What was important, it's a spirit of entrepreneurship in the society, which was not killed by these years of being oppressed by Soviet Union. Other thing which I think is very important, it's a help of our diaspora, and we open the doors for the advisors from our neighboring countries, which are friendly. And the most important thing is that we took their advice, which in some cases were not very
bitter. It was
quite bitter ones, but we understood that these are our friends, and they advise us how they see situation from outside. Sometimes being inside, not always you could make the right decisions.
You're namely, of course, naming the neighboring Baltic states, such as Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, right?
Exactly.
Because these are the countries which are overlooking the same sea like you, and the Baltic Sea. And
exactly.
You're sharing a lot of common heritage, right?
Yes, sometimes having the king from there, sometimes fighting with them. So it's like in all history,
yes,
each neighbor. So, but at the end, it's probably the best friends and best neighbors we have now. Yes, and of course, as I said, diaspora, big diaspora in Canada, big diaspora in the United States. For example, the diaspora in Canada made fundraising. And they collected a huge amount of money, and they asked the government, look, we have a huge amount of money, what would you like to do with this money? And it was a wise decision by the government. They said, we don't have embassy in Brussels. Could you buy us a building for the embassy in Brussels? And they did.
That's very good.
And they did. And I actually worked in that building, which was bought for the money collected by Canadian Lithuanians. And it was a big plaque on the wall that this building was bought by Lithuanian government for the money donated by Canadian Lithuanian community. Every day I was seeing that plaque, and it's like reminds you that you are the part of the nation. You are not alone. Someone is thinking about you, and you should in return to think about them.
Excellency is becoming very emotional, and really I'm enjoying the company of His Excellency Ambassador Arvydas Donravicus. I'm sorry for the name, but I really am appreciating that I'm sitting with the Lithuanian ambassador in Cairo, talking about the hardships of a country that is rising from the ashes of the World War II and from the occupation of World War II of the great Soviet Union at that time, and was able to survive, able to make a place among the great grand players of the economy of the world. Thank you, sir, for coming, and please stay with us after the break. You're listening to Radio Cairo, World of Info, with Dr. Amr Mabrouk and Muhammad as at the controls. And today we are honored and blessed to have with us His Excellency Ambassador Don Ravicius, from Ambassador of Lithuania in Cairo in Egypt, talking and reminiscing about how Lithuania has been rising out of the rubbles of an occupation and of a war, and finding a place as a great state in Europe. And we were listening to a piece of music which is so special because it has been played, as you have told me, by the ex-president of Lithuania, right?
That's correct. It's a Professor Vytautas Landsbergis, who was chairman of the Supreme Council of the Republic of Lithuania, actual first president of the Republic of Lithuania and the leader of the independence movement. Mm-hmm. So he recorded, his specialty is the music of Mikalojus Konstantinas Čiurlionis, and he recorded so many pieces. I would not be surprised if all pieces written by our great composer and painter Mikalojus Konstantinas Čiurlionis. So now we're listening really the music of Čiurlionis, played by Professor Vytautas Landsbergis, who was actually the first president of the Republic of Lithuania. No, he was the chairman of the Supreme Council, but he was like the president.
The nominal president, of course, definitely. Yes. So when we talk about this period, we can see the emotions in your eyes, sir, and the pride that this period, which was, of course, sort of somebody who's been jumping out of an aeroplane without a parachute, right?
right.
And as somebody who knows very well that it was the only solution to jump from this plane, and it was you're trying to find your way to get a parachute as you're approaching the land. So such a desperate situation, and you were able to survive. You told us about the people. You told us about the aid that you received from the neighboring Baltic states, the well-established ones that didn't suffer much in World War II, like Sweden, Norway, or Denmark. Of course, they had some part of their suffrage, but not like the great suffrage of Lithuania. And you had the help from other nations and from Europe and from the people. But definitely, there is somebody you can always say this particular effort was the one who was able to pull the threads together. Was there a person, or was it just the people of Lithuania?
It was just the people of Lithuania, under the right leadership of the right people. I think so. I think so. And a very strong optimism that everything is possible. That we could turn mountains, we could to bring moon on earth, we could do anything. It was such an emotional level of the emotions that we believe in everything is possible to build our country to up to the highest standard of Western society, which was for us that example of paradise on earth, to be on the level of Western society. At that time, we probably didn't know how long and how difficult the road will be, and how many sacrifices we had to make and to go through the economical reforms. But I remember the beginning that someone said, yes, these reforms are hard, but these reforms are done not because someone is demanding us to do
giving the orders from Moscow like it used to be.
Yes, exactly. But because we understand we must to do these reforms, to implement these reforms, if we want in some time to live the normal, decent life. And that understanding probably was based on our success was based on this understanding. We do these reforms for ourselves.
So when we look at this 50 years from 1940 till 1990, almost 50 years, it was definitely a very black period, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
There was not a certain glimpse of hope or glimpse of light during this period.
No, unfortunately not. And there is another period which ended, I would say, maybe in 1954, when the Soviets came, pushing Nazis away and stayed. So a lot of people took arms and went to the forests to fight the Soviet occupation. And some of them even survived to 10 years in the forests.
And then they were caught up.
Yes. Most of them, of course, died, and it's very difficult to find a family in Lithuania which, one or another way, did not suffer, did not lost someone, or someone was sent to Siberia, or deported or emigrated, or whatever. It was such a terrible period in our history that we should never ever forget. And never ever let to repeat that.
So there are a lot of people who were accused of being collaborators with the Nazis, or given the fact that they are anti-communist or whatever. I mean, every type of accusation could legitimize the murder and the
deportation. Deportations. We had several waves of terrible deportations when families. We're talking not about thousands. We're talking about 10,000 people. For country, 3 million, now 3 million. At that time probably it was even less. I don't recall what population of Lithuania was after the Second World War, but definitely less than 3 million. So for such a country it was loss, and the most people we lost, it was well-educated entrepreneurs, businessmen, farmers, owners of the land who feeded the country. It was tough period. It really was tough.
The people who went to Siberia never came back.
Some of them came. Some of them came back, and it was not an easy. Even when Stalin died, so it was like rehabilitation of these people. So they could come out of Siberia, but not. Very few of them were allowed to settle in Lithuania. They were not allowed to come to Lithuania. They could leave Siberia and then to go Uzbekistan. Most of them went to Kaliningrad district of Russian Federation, which is close to Lithuania. Some of them went to Latvia, which is also the border with Lithuania. Some of them went to Belarus, just to be as close as possible to Lithuania. Some of them have been lucky and they were allowed to go to Lithuania. Some of them, unfortunately.
That's a very great suffrage, right?
Yes. Unfortunately, that was a great suffrage, and as I said, never ever to forget and never ever to let it repeat.
Definitely. So nowadays we can say that Lithuania has done a lot to reach the welfare state, and we have seen how much you suffered, and at the same time, since the independence, you suffered many years until you were able to build this welfare state. Egyptian-Lithuanian relations have seen a great progress, and we have relations, I think, since the independence, right? How far it was?
Yes, I think we established diplomatic relations 25 years ago. I think it's somewhere this year, in the beginning of this year. I think it was 25th anniversary of our diplomatic
You have to celebrate that. You did celebration or not yet?
Not yet. I'm joking. We celebrated bringing our deputy foreign minister to Cairo and having very good, very fruitful, very open political consultation with assistant foreign minister here in Cairo, and that was really like you sit around the table with friends, and it was very good emotional charge of that meeting. I was present there and really enjoying every second of that meeting. Not only because it was very nice, very warm, like friend talking to a friend, but also that we talked about the future plans. We talked what we could do together, how we could work together, what our interest, where there are common interests. And now we are waiting for like second leg of these consultations, and we do hope that the Egyptian delegation maybe after the summer, at the end of the year, will come to Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania, to continue these consultations, as you say in this country, inshallah.
Inshallah, yes, of course. The Egyptian-Lithuanian relations is not just political ones, or not just agreement about the political status all over the world. We are both countries are denouncing the terrorism which is going very fashionable nowadays, and both countries are trying to denounce it and trying to have sort of cooperation in security measures and things like that. Tell us about the economic cooperation and about any fields of cooperation that exist between Lithuania and Egypt.
Unfortunately, we don't have Lithuanian investments in Egypt, but we do have Egyptian investments in Lithuania, mostly in the sector of hotel business, restaurant business, and consultancy. Yes, there are some number of Egyptian businessmen who are already working in Lithuania.
They built hotels over there, or bought some properties, or what?
They are in the process. They preparing the documents. They're working. They have some plans, but plan is not enough. You need to do the paperwork to settle the legal things. So they are in Lithuania, and they actually following this path, which I hope will finish with the opening hotels in Lithuania.
You have a thriving touristic industry, right? In Lithuania, you have a lot of tourists who come to the country every year.
Yes. Of course, we cannot compete with the number of tourists Egypt receives. Even when everyone is talking that
there's a difference in the population.
Yes, that's right. That's right. We're a country of 3 million, so every year we have maybe 1.5 million tourists. So
that's very.
It's not the same number as the population of Lithuania, but it's considerable number of tourists. And as we start talking about the tourism, I should mention that Egypt is rather one of the most popular destinations for Lithuanians to come. So unfortunately, due to certain turmoils in the country, the number of tourists jumping up and going down, and it's when you see the statistic, you see the number of tourists every year growing, and then something happened, the number goes down, and then the peaceful period, the number of tourists again climbing up, then again something happened, and
hopefully nothing will happen and it gets better.
Hopefully, I really big fan of tourism, of tourists coming to Egypt, because we have so much treasures to explore, starting from wonderful beaches, warm sea, ancient history, and the monuments, cultural monuments, which probably never ever you could see in any place
in the world. Exactly.
In the world.
So beside the tourist industries that you have in Lithuania, what else? What other industries and investment that you have in your country?
Of course, I should start as always say we have traditional industries and most promising industries, which are the new and the booming and probably giving the quite big
rise. Yes.
So it's ICT sector, information and communication technologies, life sciences, chemical industry. What else? Laser industry. We have a very strong school of lasers. Then to turn to the traditional industries, it's of course a food and beverage industry, which is very, very strong. Agriculture sector is very strong. Furniture industry is very strong. Oil refinery, we have oil refinery. So almost everything except warm sea and high mountains. Sometimes I joke this way.
So when we talk about Lithuania and Lithuanians in diaspora, a country, for example, like Malta, where 400,000 people are living in Malta, which is one of the most heavily populated places on earth, and at the same time there are about maybe 3 or 4 million Maltese or Maltese descents are living abroad in diaspora, if we use the expression. The same thing goes to Lithuania. have told me that people have started when you were serving in Chicago as the consul general over there. You were receiving a lot of applicants who wanted their passports back and wanted to establish more ties. Are they doing the same thing like Maltese by coming back and investing in their old country, or maybe buying a plot of land or buying houses like what the Maltese do, for example, or it's just to have their passport and have the link?
To answer by one word, everything. We have different stories. Some of them just want to have passport and that's it. Some of them they invest. Some of them they buy properties. Some of them even establish real business, building factory, not as huge one, but some opening some line to produce something, or offering their consultancy, opening firms there. Yes, everything you could have, everything. That depends probably on the age of the person also. If the younger ones, they are more eager to explore the opportunities. The more senior, they are more cautious. They probably more encouraging the young ones to go there. Some of them are going for studies. Some of them. I also should mention that we are grateful to our diaspora for the great support we receive through different charity funds to help children without parents, to help children with disabilities, to collect money and buy modern equipment, and to hire the world level surgeons to come to Lithuania and perform the operations. It's mostly on children or babies, which parents never afford because it was very, very expensive. So we are very grateful for that.
So Lithuania has two neighboring countries that have shared mostly, especially in the last 50 years after the war. I mean, from 1940 till 1990. Almost the same fate, which is Latvia and Estonia. And I know that the relationship between the three countries is very strong as regards the trilateral relations, the common fate, or the sharing of the common black history, if I may use the expression, for 50 years. How far is the relation going then and before and now?
I think that it was our biggest mistake that in 1940 we couldn't find a common language. Maybe if we could, maybe the history would be different. But now I hope, I believe we learned the lesson, and we always stand together as we did during so-called Baltic Road.
Yes, because I remember in 1987 to 1989, the three Baltic states were sharing the common urge for independence. They were claiming and saying, whether there's perestroika or not, we are different. We are occupied lands. We are occupied republics. We are not part of the Soviet Union. We have been isolated, and we have been independent states and members of the League. So we should be treated differently. And this sort of common movement, or sort of having a unified aim, has helped very much the three countries to support each other in claiming this victory in the end. So what happened in 1940? You said that everyone was working single-handedly?
Yes, single-handedly start negotiating about the common actions, but unfortunately the agreement was not reached. It was like less in today's terms, it was very little cooperation on almost everything, unfortunately, and probably that, I don't say it was the only reason, but that was also the element which was missing at that time. And if having this element, maybe our history would be a little bit different. Maybe not. I don't know. But I hope. I'm a big fan of trilateral Baltic cooperation together with the Nordic countries, as we have a special fora, 5+3.
Yes, the independence after independence, everything has changed, and as you have just mentioned, that the trilateral relations are very strong, right?
That's correct.
I mean, you're sharing a lot of common interests and aims.
Of course, and that is coordinated on different levels. We have the assembly, when the parliamentarians at three countries. We have council of prime ministers. So it means the prime ministers of three countries are meeting. We have a fora when the presidents of three countries are meeting. So if you go all layers,
and I like that. I mean. 2 years or 3 years back, I mean, you were having the same national day, right?
Yes, it used to be.
It used to be. I mean, you've done it twice. I attended. I had the honor to attend two of them, and I really was admiring the fact that the three countries were throwing the same day and the same day, and the three ambassadors were giving the speeches at the same occasion, showing sort of solidarity and sort of a new union without union. You know, I mean, without an official union, but at the same time, we're three together, right?
Right, that's correct. That's correct.
Sir, thank you very much. Really, we enjoyed the talk with His Excellency Ambassador Donra Vicius, the Ambassador of Lithuania in Cairo. We have shared very precious moments, and we have shared very private, emotional moments about the Lithuanians in diaspora and Lithuanians in the motherland and Lithuanians in Siberia. Thank you very much for sharing with us such an honorable experience, giving us hope that in times of despair and in points of despair, a country can pull itself together and can build from a near disaster, build a new state, welfare state that is finding and has found a place under the sun. Thank you, sir, for honoring us with your visit and with your words.
Thank you very much for the nice words, and I would want to say that all pleasure was mine, and I was very, very pleased to be here with you.
It's a great honor, and next week we'll see you at the same time, the same station, World of Info from Radio Cairo. This is Dr. Amr Mabrouk.